This is my apartment in Tokyo. If you are from another country, you might be thinking, wait, can someone actually live in a place this small? My bed, desk, kitchen, and storage are all packed into one compact space. But believe it or not, apartments like this are actually very common for people living alone in Tokyo. So, why a Japanese apartment is so small? Do Japanese people really prefer living in tiny spaces? Or is there another reason behind it? Today, as someone who actually lives in a small apartment in Tokyo, I'm gonna show you around my home and explain why so many apartments in Japan are much smaller than people expect. When many people from overseas see Japanese apartments are often surprised. The kitchen is small, the bathroom is small, there isn't much storage, and the place where you sleep, eat, and work is often almost the same space. By the way, I also live in a small one-room apartment. If you want to see more details about my room, I did a full room tour in this video, so feel free to check it out. Anyway, back to the topic. If you are used to larger homes overseas, you might wonder, why do Japanese people live in such small apartments? But it's not because all Japanese people love small rooms. Of course, many people in Japan would like to live in a bigger place, but when you live in Tokyo, you have to think about many things: rent, location, commuting time, and everyday convenience. So, the small size of Japanese apartments is not just about culture, it's also a practical choice for living in Tokyo. Now, let's look at the reasons one by one. The first reason is that land in Tokyo is very expensive. Tokyo has a huge number of people, companies, shops, schools, train stations, and tourist spots. In other words, many people want to live and work in the same areas, but land is limited. When many people want to live on a limited amount of land, the value of that naturally goes up. And when land becomes expensive, the cost of building apartments also become higher. That cost affected the rent. For example, if you want to live in a spacious apartment in central Tokyo, the rent can be expensive. So, for people living alone, it often makes more sense to choose a smaller apartment that they can actually afford rather than larger one that costs too much. Honestly, my apartment is also pretty small, but if I wanted to live in a bigger room in the same area, the rent would be much higher. If you want to know how much I pay for rent, I talk about it in this video, so make sure to check it out too. One reason Japanese apartments are small is not simply because people like tiny rooms. It's because with expensive land and high rent in Tokyo, smaller apartments are often the most realistic choice. The second reason is that in Japan, living close to a train station is a huge priority for many people. In Tokyo, millions of people commute to work or school by train every day. Because of that, many people value convenience more than extra space. For example, if the rent is same, a lot of people would choose a small apartment that's only 5 minutes walk from the station rather than a large one that's 20 minutes away. A shorter commute means more free time and less stress every single day. Personally, when I choose where to live, I didn't just think about the size of the apartment. I also cared about convenience and how easy it would be to get around the city. So in Tokyo, it's often more important to live in a convenient location than to have a bigger home. The third reason is that Japan has a huge number of apartments built specifically for single people. In Tokyo, there are many university students, young professionals, and employees who move here for work and live by themselves. To meet that demand, developers have built countless compact apartments such as studio apartments and one-bedroom units. These homes may not be luxurious, but they usually have everything one person needs to live comfortably: a place to sleep, a small kitchen, a bathroom, a toilet, and enough storage for every life. The idea isn't have a lot of space, it's to have a practical space that works well. That That's why many people from overseas are surprised when they browse Japanese apartments listing and think, why are all the apartments so small? The answer is simple. They are designed to match the lifestyle and the need of people living alone in one of the world's busiest cities. The final reason is that Japan has a long tradition of using limited space as efficiently as possible. In fact, my apartment isn't very big either, but in this one small room, I sleep, eat, work, and edit my YouTube videos every day. Many people in Japan are used to making the most of small spaces by organizing their storage, keeping only what they really need, and finding creative ways to use every corner of their homes. Of course, plenty of Japanese people would love to live in a bigger house, but it's also true that there's a strong culture of adapting to limited space and making it comfortable to live in. So the small size of Japanese apartments isn't just about expensive land or high rent. It's also shaped by our lifestyles and culture that values practicality, efficiency, and making the best use of the space available. In other words, over many years, people in Japan have learned how to live comfortably even in surprisingly small homes. So far, we've talked about why Japanese apartments are so small, but what are the actual good and bad sides of living in a small apartment? First, let's talk about a good side. A small room is very easy to clean since there isn't much space. There are fewer areas to organize, and vacuuming doesn't take much time. It also makes it easier to avoid buying too many things because storage is limited. You naturally start choosing only the things you really need. Since living in this apartment, I've started asking myself more often, do I really need this? And if you live close to a station or in a convenient area, shopping and getting around the city can be much easier. But of course, there are also downsides. First, storage space is very limited. If I try to keep all my clothes, books, filming equipment, and daily necessities in this room, it gets full very quickly. It's also hard to invite friends over. This room is enough for one person to live in. But if someone comes over and we want to relax, it can feel a little cramped. And when you spend a lot of time at home, it can sometimes feel a bit restrictive, especially for someone like me who editing videos and work from home a lot. There are moments when I really notice how small the room is, so living in a small apartment can be convenient, but it also comes with some challenges. In the end, I think the most important thing is whether the space fits your lifestyle. Finally, I'd like to clear up one common misconception. Many people assume that Japanese people live in small apartments simply because they like small spaces. But I don't think that's entirely true. Of course, some people enjoy minimalist living or prefer owning fewer things. But for most people, that's not the main reason. When choosing a place to live, they consider factors like rent, location, commuting time, distance, the nearest station, and overall convenience. After weighing all of those things, many people decide that a smaller apartment is the better option. This is especially true in Tokyo, where renting a larger apartment can be extremely expensive. So, instead of paying much for extra space, many people choose to sacrifice a little size in exchange for a better location and a more convenient lifestyle. In other words, Japanese apartments aren't small simply because people prefer living in tiny spaces. There's the results of balancing rent, location, and everyday, particularly in one of the world's busiest cities. So, in this video, I talked about why Japanese apartments are so small. At first, they might seem surprising, but there are several reasons behind it. The land in Tokyo, the importance living close to a train station, the large number of apartments designed for people living alone, and the culture of making the most of limited space. As someone who actually live here, of course, there are times when I think, I wish my apartments were bigger, but Even in this small room, I have everything I need for daily life, and I'm able to live comfortably. So, many Japanese apartments aren't just small homes. Maybe they are a way of living that makes the most of a limited amount of space. Now, if you are going to live in Tokyo, which would you choose? A small apartment close to the station or a large apartment further away? Let me know in these comments. If you want to learn more about real life and culture in Japan, please consider subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!